The chair of SRPC has found that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 202102, SRPC and committees thereof are authorized to meet electronically. There's no physical location to observe, listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. SRPC is utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting as follows. So there's an online registration you can access there. If you're calling in by phone, you can check the SRPC website. If you have any problems accessing it, email Rachel Dewey, that's RDEWEY @stratford.org. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, it will be adjourned and rescheduled. So welcome everyone. Good to see you all this afternoon. We're going to go around the room and just introduce ourselves at this point and note if we're alone or not.
Okay, to kind of help move this along, I will call names and I'll start with commissioners. So going along my screen, Dave Landry.
Dave Landry, Dover. I'm in my home, in my kitchen, and I'm alone.
Bill Fisher.
Hi, Bill Fisher, Farmington. I'm home alone in my back bedroom.
Don Hammond.
Don Hammond, Rochester. I'm alone in my office.
Wayne.
Wayne Burton, Durham. I'm at home alone in my home office.
Herb. You're on mute.
Herb Bueter, Rollinsford, home alone.
Lisa.
Lisa Henderson, Newmarket. I'm at home and my son and husband are here, but not in this room.
Victoria.
Victoria Parmley in Northwood, home in my study, alone in the room.
Joe.
Joe, Rochester, home alone.
Mike Babinski.
Mike Babinski, Somersworth. I'm in my office alone.
Lindsay.
Lindsay Williams, Dover. There's nobody in my immediate vicinity, but there are small children running around in the background.
Tom. Tom, you're on mute.
Hey, Tom. Well, he's here. Good to see you, Tom.
Tom, we'll come back to you if I see the unmute button go, the unmute icon go off. Evan.
Evan McDougall, Wakefield. I'm in my office. My wife's across the room.
Great. I'll now move on to SRPC staff. Rachel.
Rachel Dewey, SRPC. I'm in my home office alone.
Jen Sis, SRPC, in my home office alone. Nancy.
Hi, Nancy O'Connor, SRPC. I also have a small child running around upstairs healing, but I'm here alone in this room.
Shayna.
Shayna Sylvia, I'm alone by myself.
Natalie.
Natalie Moles, SRPC, and I am alone in this room in Durham.
Elena.
Tina Rogers, SRPC, in my home office alone.
Kyle.
Cobb Pimentel, SRPC. I'm in my home office alone.
Steph.
Stephanie Casella, SRPC, and I'm in my home alone.
Okay, and now for our guests and guest speakers, Todd.
Todd Fahey, alone in my home in Bow.
Ashley?
Ashley Desrochers. I am in my home office, but I have a 4-year-old running around as well as a dog. So
Julian?
Hi, this is Julian Long. I'm actually in Virginia and my father is here.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Tom. Commissioner?
Yes. What do you need?
Hi, I'm where you are, and if you're alone in the room.
Oh, I thought I did it already. I'm in my office, home office. Tina may roam in and out. Shelby may roam in and out.
Okay, thank you. All right, and we had one more commissioner join us, Wes.
Yes, I'm at home. I have some adult kids who may wander in or out, but for the most part, I'm by myself.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for bearing through.
Already. It's official.
Yes.
So we just have one action item, and it's a motion to approve the draft December 3rd, 2020 commission meeting minutes. Can I have a motion? Anybody?
So move.
That Tom.
Second.
Okay. Anybody have any corrections to those minutes? Ready, we're all set. Have to take a roll call vote on this.
Yes, this should go a little bit quicker. All right, Dave.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Wayne.
Yes.
Herb.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Victoria.
Yes.
Joe.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Evan.
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
Okay, that's everyone. Victoria.
Okay, we got it. So now on to the meat and potatoes of our meeting, and it's a very intriguing meeting that we have today, and having filled out the survey, it's just extremely thought-provoking, and I'm really looking forward to hearing this whole presentation. So we have two presenters, Ashley Desrochers and Todd Fahey, and I don't know who's going first, but welcome to both of you, and take it away.
All right.
Thank you. Tell me who you'd like to go first. I'm happy to wait, or I can start.
I think we're gonna have Ashley kick it off if that's all right.
Perfect.
Okay.
sure. And Shayna, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we going to show our lovely video first, or would you like me to open it up first?
Whatever order you'd prefer, I'm ready.
Sure. Okay, so I'll go first. So as you all heard, my name is Ashley Desrochers. I actually work for Strafford County Public Health Network, which is a program of Greater Seacoast Community Health. It's a network of healthcare organizations and community-based programs, everything from recovery services to public health, to pediatric services to community-based healthcare, which includes prenatal services, dental, you name it. So we really excitingly partnered with Stratford Regional Planning Commission on this project to focus on creating age-friendly communities. And we excitedly named it CHAT, which is Communities for Healthy Aging Transitions. So what does that mean? It's all about really identifying what's already happening in community, what's going on, how do we make our communities healthier and more age-friendly for all populations. So making sure that we're retaining our younger populations. What do they need? What are sort of these domains of livability that we need to address in each community? What's happening? But also, what are our needs for other populations? So that's kind of a general and broad overview. And Shayna, I think it's probably you that's going to share this lovely video that we made for our media toolkit.
Yes.
I'll let you take it away.
Okay. Let me make sure my audio is the right. Oh, share sound. Okay, I think this should work. Let me make sure my volume's all the way up. Okay.
Hello,
Let's chat. My name is Shayna Sylvia and I work with Stratford Regional Planning Commission. We are here to tell you about an exciting project called Communities for Healthy Aging Transition, or CHAT. This is a 2-year project funded by the Tufts Health Plan Foundation to further their mission of improving healthy living with an emphasis on older people. They have funded similar projects with the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission and Southwest Region Planning Commission, who have done great work in assessing communities and also carrying out pilot projects. Our mission with this project is to assess how age-friendly communities are and to explore ways to make our region more welcoming, adaptive, inclusive, and safe for people of all ages. We will look at recreation and public spaces, diversity, community events and organizations, employment and volunteer opportunities, connectivity and accessibility, and lots of other factors. CHAT is a collaboration between Stratford Regional Planning Commission and Stratford County Public Health Network. Stratford County Public Health Network seeks to improve the health, wellness, and quality of life for all individuals in Stratford County, New Hampshire, by building one integrated system of community members, businesses, and health organizations working together to address public health needs. Stratford Regional Planning Commission's mission is to ensure that the region is responsive to the needs of its residents through plans that foster sustainable development and improve quality of life. Both Stratford Regional Planning Commission and Stratford County Public Health Network have unique approaches to their work that complement each other, and we are excited to team up to develop innovative, age-friendly community resources, strategies, and projects.
My name is Ashley Desrochers and I work for Stratford County Public Health Network. I'm really excited about this partnership for the CHAT project because in public health, really what we do is all about building relationships and collaborating. And this is an opportunity to build a relationship with another organization that has a really similar mission. And it's also an opportunity to chat with our communities and leverage all of our partnerships to create change for healthy aging in our region.
Our steering committee is a big part of what we do. They inform our outreach, our reporting, and a lot of our decisions. We worked hard to create a diverse group for this project that includes representatives from a wide array of community organizations. We have representatives from Seacoast Outright, UNH Institute on Disability, Dover Teen Center, Community Partners, UNH Cooperative Extension, and Stratford County Community Action Partnership, among others.
Hey everyone, Steve Papajohn here from the Dover Teen Center. I just want to take a moment and talk about CHAT and how important CHAT is to the work that I'm doing. If you think about our aging populations, and then you think about our kids, all too often the two never connect. And I think that's what this is about for me, is really giving our seniors and our aging population folks in our community a chance to connect with kids. Make sure some of those stories don't go untold, those life experiences that they can share. There's a lot of really good stuff there, and I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be engaged.
It is important for communities across northern New England to leverage the wisdom and strengths of older people. The percent of our population that is 50 plus is growing. In fact, the 80 plus segment is growing the fastest. I'm very excited about the opportunities and impact the Communities for Healthy Aging Transitions initiative will have on our quality of life and economy. Working together alongside other efforts, we can make our communities a great place for all ages to live, work, and play.
And now for the project outcomes. We'll be chatting with citizens in each of the 18 communities using different outreach approaches such as surveys, virtual focus groups, individual interviews, and meetings with municipal staff. This will be paired with a look at existing information and data available. After, we will create a report for each community. These reports will provide context around questions like, how does your community provide an inclusive, welcoming, supportive, and healthy environment for people of all ages? Or do you have access to transportation for medical appointments or to get groceries? They will also provide an overview of strengths and opportunities relative to providing high quality of life for people of all ages.
Hi, my name is Nancy and I'm the Equity Engagement Planner at Stratford Regional Planning Commission. Our second phase, we're going to work with 4 of our 18 communities to write an action plan, which will be a more detailed, in-depth plan for your community so that you can start thinking about projects, thinking about changes, thinking about making it a more livable community, improving upon strengths that you already have, and improving capacity. The final phase will be working with 2 different communities on a pilot project. So these will be projects that we hope to actually implement within, or at least get them to the stage of implementation within the last phase of our project. We are so excited to start working with all of you and talking to you. Let's hear what you've got to say.
Awesome. I love that video. Shayna did an amazing job compiling it. And it's just really exciting to watch everything come together. So I think at this point, Jen, are we going to transition it over to Todd? Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm up. That was excellent. Thank you so much, and welcome. Nice to see you all, and thank you for having me, Jen, and the team in Stratford, and hello, commissioners and others. Ashley, really great job. Really enjoyed that a lot. So before I get into my little PowerPoint, let me just tell you give you a little bit of background. And I'm always loath to do it, but I feel like context matters in this case a little. So when I'm talking to you and it seems like I'm talking at you, I love to present in person, but this is a little different virtually. I've been doing a lot of it. So I'll do my best to be engaging and occasionally funny, if not ironic. I won't do any funny things like the funny videos like the cat. We were all joking about that, the cat video with a lawyer who couldn't get rid of the talking head. Although if I did, it would be quite engaging and funny. But nonetheless, two things, I guess, to start with, and all of it begins kind of in New Hampshire and fairly close by. The first part is me. I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm a native of the state. I was born in Manchester and grew up in Bedford before it was the little mecca that it's become now. If any of you know the area, like some of the thoroughfares, my dog used to sleep on them, not anymore. So Back River Road was a place where my mother still lives and where I grew up, and our dog used to slip, sun itself out there. I share that with you only to give you a sense, because I think it's important when I speak to commissions and certainly boards that people have a sense that I sort of have the New Hampshire experience. And so I've lived it. I do understand New Hampshire. I understand the fiscal nature of the place. Most of my family is still here. I went away to college. I went away to graduate school. I returned to New Hampshire, and I've spent most of my life practicing law here. I was here a lawyer at Orr & Reno most recently for 21 years. I served on my local ZBA, went before a lot of land use boards, and I took my current post at AARP as the state director in 2014. I climbed my mountains as a lawyer, and I was looking for some new challenges. So here you have me. And then the other piece that is New Hampshire centric is the work that we began at AARP with the great work of your kind of another commission, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And they are a really diligent group, frankly, much like the team in Strafford. And I think what was most interesting is I think they called me like on January 2nd or 3rd of 2015 and 2016, and they said, we've got to get going with age-friendly stuff. If we're going to do it, we need to do it. We need to move it. There was a lot of discussion about it. And in fairness, the planners and the planning commissions have been on the vanguard of this work for a long time. So before we start being all self-congratulatory, like at AARP about our domains, the nod to planners is one that we mean with all sincerity. It was a natural collection of work with the Southern New Hampshire Planning and Sylvia Von Aulich and her team. Some of you may know Sylvia because she comes from the Seacoast area before she took the position. And every time we do these, we start to roll out this so-called age-friendly work, it takes a different flavor. So Southwest did it in a certain way. Manchester and, well, not so much Manchester yet. I'll get back to that later, but Southern New Hampshire did it in a certain way. The process is inherently iterative, and now you're all doing it in a different way with the health network and taking that different health lens, which I think is frankly brilliant. And I want to start before you may ask the question. We don't mandate that anybody do anything. The question I think that we come to this with, and the lens that I approach this work with, is being, two things really catalytic, and then giving people a message of intentionality that it is your decision, again, circling back to my New Hampshire roots and knowing, we are the live free or die state, and we, happily so. but we're not telling anybody how to do anything. It's simply an offer about being more intentionally age friendly for younger people and older people alike. So I'll pause there and get into my PowerPoint, but I just, I want to circle back a little and just make it clear that I do understand the landscape of New Hampshire. I've been, I'm at the legislature testifying from time to time. I've certainly been before many, many local boards. I've served on them. So if any of you have the sense that, and I've gotten this from other planning commissions, so I guess I'm being a little preemptive to say that I don't understand the New Hampshire landscape. I do. I don't understand your towns like you do, nor do I understand your regions like you do, and I wouldn't suppose to, but I do understand New Hampshire, and I'm a proud Granite Stater. So I'm gonna go into my PowerPoint now, give you a little sense about where we are. So I'm going to talk to you about just livable communities and the age-friendly network in general. And the livable communities in New Hampshire and being age-friendly, it is a framework that is inherently flexible and malleable. And I want to talk to you about the key elements of that and what the framework looks like. And they really are a flexible framework that helps to create livable communities that are great places for all ages. And that's really important. I mean, AARP has 220,000 members who are basically generally over 50, but they don't have to be. And if you want to join, if you're younger than 50, we'd be happy to have you. But we are a social mission organization. We're a 501c4, and we do a lot of work. So certainly we advocate for people who are older, but we also understand that older people live in communities that must be comprised of people of all ages. So with that, let me advance my slide here. Hold on a second. So this is a bit of a functional definition of what an age-friendly and livable community is. But before I get to that, I just want you to think about it.
Todd, sorry to interrupt you. Are you sharing a PowerPoint? Because we can't see it right now.
Oh, really? It's not sharing?
You want to try to share your screen again?
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
Thanks for telling me that.
No problem.
See, I did do like the cat video. I'm really not a cat. Sorry about that. Thank you for calling it out.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
We can see your folder that has the file in it.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So livable communities, and I think I'm not going to repeat what I just said. I think you can all hear what I said about it. And so I'll move on. I trust you're seeing the screen now?
Yep.
Super. So this is a functional definition, but before there's I have a sensory definition and a functional definition, and a functional definition of sort of like what these things are made of, what makes a place livable. But as I'm going through my presentation, I'd ask you all just to think for a moment, just reflect for a moment about a place in your life, a place that you were in your life, and that most of your needs were met, or all of your needs were met, that you felt safe, that you felt engaged, that you felt that you had what you needed to be really most human. That might sound a little hokey to you, but if you think about that long enough, it might have been in your youth, in your neighborhood. It might be where you are now. It might have been a college campus. It might have been, it could be anywhere. It could be some place, but that place had elements of livability because you felt that you could actually live your life and be human, regardless of where you were on the life spectrum, on the younger end or the older end. And then I would ask you, by contrast, to think about a place where maybe you were in a foreign city, or maybe you served in the military and you may have been in a war zone. And, I don't mean to even jest about that. There's nothing funny about it, but if you've been there, or if you were in a place that you were lost, maybe even in an urban area that was blighted in the US, you didn't feel that was a place that would be a place where you could navigate. And obviously there's a spectrum of livability and non-livability. And for those of you who have been there, the picture you have here is one sense of livability. And then in your mind, you may have, or your experience, you may have had other senses of what a place that was not livable looked like. So bearing those things in mind, the AARP, we are the US affiliate of the World Health Organization. And this is a global initiative about how we make places more livable. It's not prescriptive. We're not telling people what to do or how to do it. I went to one town, my hometown of Bedford, and I was challenged vigorously by a gentleman who was convinced that this was an effort to foist the designs of the World Health Organization on the humble town of Bedford. And I assured this person that that was not the case. And I assure you, it is not the case. And he lavished a ton of other pleasantries upon me, all on local access television, while my elderly mother was watching, which was even funnier. And I was just simply trying to explain something without selling anything to anybody. And I sell nothing to you. I'm not making any pitch except to talk to you about, you know, where we fit into where you find yourself now in this iterative process of livability in New Hampshire. So it all begins with this domain of livability. And we are an aging world, we are an aging nation, and we are certainly an aging state. And that is not a bad thing. And so certainly, if it weren't for the older people in New Hampshire, we'd have huge problems by way of livability, by way of civic engagement, by way of volunteerism, by way of human capital. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I don't say it because I carry the banner of AARP only. I do say it because of that, but I also say it because I've lived it. I've seen it repeatedly over and over again. But at the same time, I think we can think about how it is that we create places. And here in the middle, you see age-friendly city. It could be age-friendly city, it could be age-friendly town, I recognize, or it could be an age-friendly region. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But there are domains of livability that you can see, and there are 8 of them. And if these domains are done well, and they don't have to all be done well, but they collapse to make a place more age-friendly for somebody who's 8 or somebody who's 80. And if you think about it, and you go back to my suggestion of bringing a place to mind where you felt that your needs were met, you can see how these boxes are checked off. If it was a college campus, you know, maybe you had your bike, you had your dorms, you had the green spaces, you had plenty of friends, you had a chance to better yourself academically. You might have had a chance for a work-study job or to do something. You certainly were given a lot of communication information about what was happening. You had the health services around, and you had open spaces all around you, and it all collapses right into a place that's this little microcosm. There is no reason we can't be more intentional about how it is that we do our towns and cities, but it requires some degree of intentionality. And if done with intentionality, and it's simply a suggestion of intentionality, and then we make places that are more attractive for those who are 8 or 80. And then it further did, you see these bisecting lines and such, but you have the built environment and you have the social environment. So some of these domains really are in the realm of the social environment and others in the built environment. I'm going to come back again to my comments about being a Granite Stater through and through. And I am, and I love the Granite State. So people say to me, well, you can talk all you want about downtown Concord and its main street, but you and I both know, you know, that there were federal funds in there and you had private participation in the downtown Concord. Guilty as charged. I understand that. You might talk about Nashua. You might talk about Portsmouth. You might talk about Bristol. The list goes on and on. So it doesn't always have to be the built environment. Sometimes you can look at different elements of livability and still make a place or a region more intentionally age-friendly. And I say that because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and you know, presumably there'll be some assistance to state and local government forthcoming. But if there wasn't, there may well be holes. I think we're in pretty decent shape, having studied the governor's budget, which is really good for New Hampshire, something we should all be proud of. But you know, if there weren't, I mean, looking for, you know, funding to build like a new amphitheater for an intergenerational amphitheater, like they're considering, let's say in North Conway, may not be something that the townspeople think very highly about. But you don't have to do that. You can just look at these environments and these domains, and you can focus on different things. And I'll highlight a couple of them. for those of you who have young children or had young children, the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission would have a message for you. It used surveys as you folks are planning to do in your region. And one of the things that they heard with commonality amongst the 13 or 14 communities that they represent was that, you know, when my kids were in school, I knew everything that was going on. And now that they're not, I don't. Well, and how is that magnified? Well, it's magnified by the fact that many of the local newspapers are no longer in business because they weren't viable, right? And then, you know, further going back, I mean, we used to have people like town criers. You know, I guess the people would ring the bell and they tell you what's going on. I mean, we should bring those people back. I mean, I'd love to have a town crier. I'm assuming that's what they do. I'm no student of town criers. But in all seriousness, you know, that's one way to make it a place more age-friendly and more livable. So one night I was in another town in Southern New Hampshire and had a somewhat, another fairly hostile board, which I thought was kind of funny. Again, I was just trying to explain something. So the chair of the board, and I won't tell you if it was a select board or town council because I'll give it away, and it was not Bedford, kind of very grumbly looked at me and just kind of barked at me that I was next. And I was with the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And, you know, he says, you know, we have a packed agenda. Can you just move on? I said, well, this is kind of important. I'm happy to chat with you. Thanks for having me. Just move on. I'm like, okay, well, I felt like my old lawyer days. Everybody hates lawyers. I'm like, does he know I'm a lawyer? Is that what it is? Did I somehow offend him or something? It was great. But he had just finished talking about the fact that this particular town had an incredibly beautiful network of trails. Great network of trails. And then he said that people were complaining that nobody used them and nobody knew about them. So if you look at the domains of livability, that was just an opportunity for that particular municipality to be more intentional and connect the dots for its townspeople. We have information that would say to you that one of the best things people want to see, like in outdoor spaces, they just want to know how far they walk on the trail. Put up a 4x4 post and say a quarter mile, a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, and maybe a little bit of wayfinding. That's it. That's $200. That's not a big warrant article. But anyways, for instance, this particular town I had to just really talk about that so they can understand where we were coming from and what the opportunity and what the promise and the opportunity available to them really was. And lest it sounds like I'm being too, I don't know, too obvious, I would just submit to some of you that there was a long time when we didn't have wheels on suitcases. They didn't always roll with the ease that they roll through the airports now. People would lug them through the airports. Hence, I mean, I'm assuming that's why they called it luggage. But I guess what I'm saying is that we're all so busy, we don't always take the time to be intentional. So the age-friendly project is, I think, in many ways, an endeavor and intentionality. So people can become more age-friendly along various domains. If you want to have a certification as an age-friendly city or an age-friendly region, that is a more intentional process. We're not selling it. We make no money on this. This is just part of our social mission. So this is a process of becoming age-friendly, and it's a continuous cycle of improvement. And sometimes people might want to go there and they might want to become a certified age-friendly city. Sometimes people might not. They just want to deal with different domains and be more intentional to make their place more livable for the younger and, and the older residents. So I won't spend too much time on that. Suffice it to say that I'm not either requiring or encouraging people to embark in the entire thing to get an age-friendly certification from a certifying organization. If you want it, great. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. So I think I've touched upon this, and in some places, and I know we're a very, very, very divided country. We are a nonpartisan organization, and proudly so. Any of you on either side of the aisle in New Hampshire would know we support policies that favor the 50+, their families, and the communities in which they live. But we're not partisan, and we play it straight down the middle. And I'm proud of that. And it's a great place to be in a polarized world today. But I wouldn't say there's anything particularly political about making sure that young kids can walk on the street safely, that older residents can navigate a complete street, or that people with disabilities can still move about. And again, those are things that I'll just put out there. But this is about really making places livable for all. So we have had people who enroll in the network. So I'll talk a little bit about the AARP Livable Communities Network. What the network is, well, first of all, the framework gives a framework for going about work. And you've adopted, I think, certainly the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has used some domains. You folks are using some domains of livability to focus on. And you can, various places, regions, or towns can join the network, and they get certain benefits by joining the network. Again, there is no cost to it, but they get learning. And I'll give you some examples of what the learning looks like. A few years back, Bethel, Maine, home of Sunday River, figured out transportation. They created a volunteer transportation network. So if you lived in Bethel, you were able to move about Bethel with relative ease by virtue of a volunteer network created. So if you were part of the network, and it would be easy for you to figure out exactly how it was that Bethel, Maine did that and how they sustained it, for instance. And so it's just a shared learning, or you can just share with different towns or cities. So in New Hampshire, the biggest constellation you see up in the North Country is the Mount Washington Valley Age Friendly. They went full throttle on this. They had an incredibly capable leader in the person of Dr. Mary Ellen Jackson. And that is a group much like your group. It's a very broad group. You have business, you have buy-in from the municipalities. When I go up there and speak to those people, and I love the North Country, admittedly. I was engaged there, and I was just there actually over the weekend. I love it up there. So I love the people of the North Country. But their valleys are different places, and the Mount Washington Valley is a really tight-knit place. So they're coming together to figure out how they make themselves more age-friendly. But their focus is a little different. They have a real housing problem up there, because they have a service-based industry and they need a lot of workers, and it's very hard to find housing. It's become even more acute because of a lot of people who used to maybe rent those places out when they weren't using them. People have moved up there and they're taking residence in those places. And if they're not living there, occupying square footage, then the costs have gone up dramatically. But the Mount Washington Valley came together as a region, put together an action plan. I would refer you to the Gibson Center if you want to see it. So good was this plan that it became a regional model. It became a model for AARP and some of the work regionally. And it was even pushed up as a potential model for how regions themselves can become more age-friendly to the World Health Organization. It was brilliant. Not a lot of cost, great outcomes. They're tackling housing with things like co-housing, and it's all consensus building. It's really cool. It's very exciting. So that's the Mount Washington Valley. You'll also see that we have Londonderry and Goffstown who joined, and in your area, Dover and Portsmouth. And everybody is at a different point in their journey, but all of these folks at one point decided to join the network and partake of its benefits. What I like about it, again, is that it's not necessarily, I think the funding that you've gotten from Tufts has been great. They have been outstanding. And I think everybody wants to know that you have a mechanism for perpetuation. So when the funding goes away, the processes and the momentum that is built in the funding period is not lost. So that's the age-friendly network for now. So a few things to talk about on the aging side. I mean, every day, and plus or minus, 10,000 people turn 65 in the US. And by 2030, we're going to have twice as many people over 65 as we have today. So we do need to think about how we intentionally do our places so the people who want to stay in New Hampshire and call New Hampshire home can feel like they can navigate. This is a quickly happening thing. And you've all seen it with the pandemic. So to digress just for a second, to think about like how livable communities matter. Think about when we were all home and we were not really able to go anywhere. We had to basically stay at home orders. You were pretty happy to have trails to walk on or open spaces to be in. And then when summer came and we tried to relax the rules and keep our favorite little restaurants in place, we're pretty happy to be able to take a few parking spots and make those into outdoor dining facilities so we could get a little respite from the fatigue that is, beset all of us during this pandemic. again, those are livable communities in real time, that kind of stuff that you can see. This organization is now out of business, the New Hampshire Center for Public Policy Studies. It was used with permission. And I'm loath to say this, but this is the so-called silver tsunami. I hate that expression. And Steve Norton, I don't think he coined it, but he used it a lot. I used to say to him, and here's where I'm going to try to be funny. We would frequently speak together, and I would lean over to him and I'd say, "Seniors shine on me." And he says, "What?" I said, "Seniors shine on me." And if you know Steve Norton, he's a pretty serious, hard driving guy. And we used to go back and forth. You thought it was bad in the presentations. It was terrible in the parking lot, or sometimes we'd go biking together and we would just debate everything about, who was right on the data. Anyways, this is the so-called silver tsunami, when this wave of older people in New Hampshire is going to overtake New Hampshire. Well, that doesn't have to be the case. And that is not what needs to happen in any way, shape, or form. So I would tell Steve, stop likening a whole cohort of New Hampshire's population to a destructive force of nature. It's not okay. Stop doing it. Hence my little comment. I was trying to confuse them, said seniors shine on me. It's a good thing, they'll make you happy. Stop talking about them as a tsunami. But anyways, this was the growth chart, and it's a big number. So it does make the case that we have to think a little bit about how we're doing things. Our data says that most people want to live in their homes as they age and in their communities. That's great. How does that look if we don't have robust transit? How does it look if we are in a situation where most people live in housing stock like this, but that housing stock was designed for able-bodied 35-year-olds? And we all age. It just happens. It just doesn't, we don't feel like we necessarily felt it 25 or 30 when we get older. So how does it look? How does it look for New Hampshire to age if we're not more intentional about how we help people stay in their homes and communities, and how we help them get about, and how we help them live full and vibrant lives? We don't want to be a state or a nation of shut-ins. I think we all want to do better than that. So I think we've talked about this before, and here's our challenge. We have an aging population, and at least until recently, and I think this number might be changing, we did have a pretty substantial outflight of millennials and young people. So it would seem to me that if except those two things are true, certainly one is true, and two, I think, is still relatively true. There is some sense that people are coming back to live, and the cities are a little less attractive at the moment. But if that's true, and I think they both are to some degree, we do need to create places and communities that are attractive to younger people and older people alike. And that brings us back to what a livable community looks like, and the intentionality about making a place a little more livable. So anyways, this is a place where you can go for resources. I am always available. Certainly I've worked with Jen before. She knows how to find me, but AARP.org, Livable Communities, there's a great deal of information there. And I guess I'll pause there, having not had a chance to engage any questions. So
I'll just bring us back so we can kind of all see each other here for the discussion part. So we did have one question in the chat box. Can you elaborate on how a community or what it takes to become an age-friendly community?
Yeah, it takes, first of all, there's enrollment, and then there's the creation of an action plan, and then a commitment to becoming more age-friendly and dealing with these domains in substantial ways, so that you can prove that you're a place that is, really truly focused on those domains of livability, all 8 of them, to get that certification. And I will say on that subject, I've spent a lot of time thinking about a lot of these issues in my prior life, and I will tell you that it's a preview for this commission and for Jen and your team. We're going to deal with housing this year. When I say we, AARP New Hampshire, and I'm going to deal with it in a very aggressive, in an aggressive thought way, just like really kind of, and really try to aim big. And the way we're going to try to deal with it is to take a completely different approach to how we deal with housing, and how we deal with the housing shortage within existing regulations and some existing ideas, but with different partners and maybe some some tax incentives and if people are interested. So that's a teaser.
Fantastic. And to kind of tie that into the work that Strafford Regional Planning Commission is conducting under the chat project, for all of the communities in the region, we'll be doing those community assessments, which would be some of the base information that would feed into an action plan. And we do have funding to do a select number of action plans for those communities that are really interested in taking it to the next step, as Nancy is holding up for. So we'll be, reaching out to communities to do some of the ongoing public engagement. And through that, as we kind of talk to each community a little bit more, as we hear that there are some that are really interested in kind of taking this to the next level, we will be able to prepare the 4 action plans for communities in our region. And that would help kind of bring you to some of those requirements to enroll in the AARP program.
That's great. And I would be happy, like in Southern New Hampshire, I went out to some of those communities and I said, this is an opportunity for you. It's not a requirement. And again, I come back to like where I started about being from New Hampshire. People don't like to be told what to do in New Hampshire. They just don't. And I get it. So I'm like, I'm not telling you what to do. It's just an offer if you want to do it, because people get really upset. And for the commissioners in the room, it's very annoying to have a person like me, even if I don't have the tie on and look like a lawyer, because lawyers before the boards never goes well. So, I don't even talk about being a lawyer when I go out. But when I go out and try to talk to people, even if I try to be gentle, people feel like it's an attack on what they've done. And they say, like, we are helping seniors move around in our town. We do great things. We have Meals on Wheels happening. I'm like, I'm not saying you don't. Well, you don't know what we're doing. I said, I don't know what you're doing. And I don't mean to imply that you're not doing anything. And if I have, forgive me. I'm simply saying this is another opportunity to be even more intentional about it. So I want to make sure you all understand that. And if there's something I'm saying that's giving people the sense that I'm telling them what to do, send it in the chat box or tell Jen so I stop doing it forever, because it's not helping our cause if I do.
So we have a few more minutes here before we need to move on to the next part of the agenda. Are there any questions for Ashley or the SRPC project team, or for Todd and his presentation from AARP? See Wayne, and then Dave, and then Joe.
In the mid-'80s, when I was in the legislature, 3 elderly gentlemen came to House Education after dropping their wives off at daycare because they had Alzheimer's. We got together and filed legislation because there was nothing in New Hampshire for anyone who had an Alzheimer's person or suspected Alzheimer's or early dementia in their household. It's a dilemma in any community, and we don't talk about it. But the truth is, it's happening in an epidemic fashion. Does your organization provide any resources to people who suspect that's going on in their family with a spouse or a parent? And what can they do about it? It's not like a medical condition where you can get the person to a doctor. I was my mother-in-law's guardian for 14 years when she went through it and finally passed away. As you know, Alzheimer's doesn't kill people very quickly. It takes a long, long time. Have you done any work on that and how communities can provide services to families who have an early dementia or Alzheimer's person or suspect they have in their household?
Yeah, absolutely, Wayne, and thanks for bringing that up. And let me just, I'm in the middle of it now. In August, my stepmother-in-law, my wife's father's wife, had a medical setback. He's mid-stage Alzheimer's. She basically had a very serious setback to the extent that she said to my wife and I, you have to take care of him. So suddenly we're in the middle of that. And it was exacerbated by the pandemic because he wasn't adult daycare, but it was similar stuff so that she could get respites and she could get breaks. So what you're asking about is what we do for caregiving and home and community-based services. I live it personally as an organization.
What I'm looking for is how do you get a diagnosis? once, at least if you don't have a diagnosis, you can't go for services. And that's what I'm curious about, is where do you go for a diagnosis? How do you get the person to be evaluated?
Yeah, I have two suggestions for you. The first is, so we have a whole thing about AARP.org on caregiving, because it envelops the whole issue of caregiving and what that looks like in the spectrum of the disease. Then I would also AARP.org caregiving, but also Alzheimer's. The Alzheimer's Association has incredible information on their website. Furthermore, we don't have enough funding right now for adult daycare in New Hampshire. It's been cut, and we've advocated and continue to advocate even currently for more home and community-based services that would, let people stay in their home. If you're a caregiver and you get some respite, like my stepmother was doing, she could very much deal with her husband, who was a very easy Alzheimer's patient, except for the fact that she's a tremendous introvert, lovely lady, but it was exhausting to her. And she had no respite. When the pandemic hit, everything shut down. So those places in many cases have not yet reopened. And I am happy to talk with you offline about it, but that is in the middle of the work that we're doing. So if Jen, if you would like to give Mr. Burton my number, I'm happy to talk with him at length. It's a great question.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for your work on it.
Yeah, Wayne, we'll definitely do that. And Wayne, also, Lisa dropped something in the chat box as another resource to look into as well. So I want to make sure we get to our other questions. Next up was Dave.
Thank you. I'm curious if you know, or we could speak for a moment on this perception I have, and if I'm wrong about this, I'd like to know. But much of New Hampshire, especially when you get away from the seacoast, and much of Maine when you get away from the southeastern part, and a lot of Vermont. And I grew up in New York, Poughkeepsie, New York, but I went to college in Plattsburgh. So I'm going to say the northern part of New York. There's a lot of this aging thing is out of control. And to me, going back to some of these places, it's been kind of depressing, to be honest. And I'm wondering whether the perception you have at AARP is that the kind of things you're talking about in, say, for New Hampshire and parts of New Hampshire, that they're whether they're true, across the entire swath of area in the North Country. And I contrast that with having just taken a road trip to drop my son off at college in Florida. And we had occasion to visit people along the way. And you go through northern Florida, Georgia, a lot of Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina. I don't know whether they have the same kind of issues, but one of the things I notice is things are booming. Even in a pandemic, it's amazing the stuff going on and the money that's flowing into those areas, and jobs and companies, and a lot of stuff tying people in with communities that have colleges in them and stuff that are very tuned into the aging population. So I guess what I'm saying is that your perception that the entire northern region, seems to have these issues. That's my perception.
So
I love to be wrong.
Okay, well, let me respond. You're not wrong. I mean, we obviously had an industrial base and we've lost that, right? I mean, all of northern New England and, and even northern upstate New York, I mean, has in many cases lost a lot of what it used to have. I mean, you had Rochester, in upstate New York, right? Then you had the manufacturing in Troy. You had a lot of that in Vermont, in rural Vermont. You certainly had it in the paper mills of northern New Hampshire. So here's what I would say. It's all the more important to have a framework then for bringing back younger people and older people alike, so that you can find a way to create some vibrancy. So let me bring you to Berlin, which I know well. They're struggling in Berlin, and I know it well because I was I ran an organization up there under court order for 14 months, a critical organization with like some 300 employees prior to taking this position at AARP. And I would say that there are some young people really trying, but in many cases, it's a real challenge for them. So they're building an ATV park and they're trying to figure out what their resources are. What can they do to attract people? How can they get younger people there? There's a rock climbing scene. If you go to Berlin, it's kind of interesting. Everybody drives like their ATVs on the road. So you'll be at a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's and there are 4 ATVs behind you because they have ATV parks. So I guess that's, for them, that's what they decided they would do to reinvent themselves. To answer your question, is it enough to create the vibrancy that was once the economic locomotive driver of the business or the factory? I don't know. I mean, that probably is not going to be coming back. So will the service economy or a whole bunch of them make it so that it's a better and more livable place? I'm hoping so. But I'll give you an example in the network. Bethel, Vermont had a similar challenge. And they decided they were going to try to, small group of people, re-inspire their little downtown Main Street on a public throughway. So take a look at it, Bethel, Vermont. It's pretty interesting. And they did, they had leadership who was resistant to any change. They wanted things to stay the way they were. So whatever little Main Street they had got ruined. And it just was going into disrepair. And ultimately leadership changed at the town level. And then they tried to recreate something to make that place something more than just the shell of what it once was. So I'm not going to tell you it's not a challenge. I'm a realist. You are absolutely right. You're not wrong in your assessment, but it makes the case as to why you need some methodology to deal with these issues and at least some intentionality about knowing what it is that you're missing that's not making your place livable.
Thank you.
Happy to talk offline too, Dave. Thanks for the question.
And for everyone, I put Todd's contact info into the chat box there so that you can grab his email. So next question we had was from Joe.
Thanks, Jen. And Todd, you kind of talked about it just there. The impression I get from what Ashley presented was it's aging, teen to adult to senior, eventually even earlier than teen. Most of the conversation that I'm hearing is around age. So in 2040, 30% of the people in New Hampshire are going to be over 65, but 70% are going to be younger than 65. And so I hope that what we do here, and I think the work, by the way, is great. I like what we're doing here, but I want to make sure that we make sure that we're talking about the whole spectrum and don't get people thinking that it's only 65 and older. So that's just a comment. If you have any comments, that'd be great.
It's a great comment. It's well received. I touched upon that specifically in my PowerPoint. It is about having places that are good for people who are 8 and 80. And you should look at some of these. There's something called 8 to 80 cities. There are incredible organizations that have done super work to make that the case. And to your point, I think I remind people in my home state as well, you need young people here, because I tell people, like, let me tell you what, you try to get your furnace fixed and you need your furnace when it's cold. And a lot of the people in those trades, for better or for worse, are aging out and they're not doing it. And I said, so when the furnace goes out and there's nobody because we didn't encourage younger people or give younger people places to live who were doing the noble work of going into the trade, shame on us, right? I mean, and so we have to make it a place that is a little more attractive to many people. And it can't, and again, I love the Lakes region, I love the mountains, but it can't just be a bunch of people coming from Connecticut, New York, or Boston, to live on the lake on the weekend and then go back home again, because all those people still live there. And, you all know this, there's a tension. They don't like it. And I talk to them privately, because I know a lot of them. I mean, I grew up here. They don't like it. Sometimes they feel like that people are not respectful of the fact that once the boat gets put up for the winter, I mean, these people still have to sort of feed their families and live their lives and get their furnaces fixed. So it's a point well raised and well taken. I am making it sure that, and I think you're all doing that too with your initiative, making sure you're focusing on the entire age spectrum.
And I also want to take a step further to say that it's not just about age. And I think that's one thing that, you know, this is about being age friendly, but there's also these other factors, right? Like where you work, it's about, you know, your homeless status or not. It's about your gender identity. It's about your sexual orientation, all of these factors that play into what impacts our health and all of these other things. So it's not just like one age, right? Like we think about the aging population, is it just people over the age of 65? Everyone's aging, right? And everyone's living. So how do we make sure that this is a place where everybody wants to be and has an opportunity to do that safely? So there's many different ways to look at this. So Todd, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very thought-provoking, and coming from someone who's doing vaccine distribution and trying to like really make sure that everybody has access across age and all these other factors, I really appreciate it and all of your work and thought.
Thank you, Ashley, and likewise, thank you.
For sure.
Can I ask a quick question?
Ashley or me?
No, can I ask a question?
Victoria, and then Lindsay, and then we're gonna move on to our next agenda item.
Okay, I'm sorry if I cut in. I didn't see that. I'm just wondering, Todd, as far as the political will at the state level now and in the future to help leverage the wonderful efforts that you're part of and that SRPC and other regions are part of. How do you see that? Because obviously it's going to take money and policies to really make this happen on a really broad scale to really address some of the things that Dave was mentioning. That, you know, with some of these dying areas, it's a big job.
Yeah, it's a big job. I think the legislature, at least what I knew of it, they all were aware of the plight of the North Country, and so I think that there's certainly. I don't know how much money there's going to be, but I do think people care about economic growth and development. And I do think people, regardless of their political stripes, are very concerned about the demise of places that they might call home. And I think there's a commonality that's human here. And I got to tell you, I mean, I'm happy to step into the fray and take the punches on it, and I have. I mean, and I've shared a few of them with you, sometimes because they're funny, but not so much. I mean, if you're not one who doesn't like taking a punch, you can't really get into this realm of public policy. So trying not to have this be loaded with anything, I want to believe. I'll just start. I mean, we have a Republican governor. He was very focused on older workers, for instance, like in one of the domains is employment. And I've said to people all the time, and I mean no disrespect to younger people, but the fact of the matter is, and I've told Governor Sununu this in his office, and we have very robust discussions, Governor Sununu and I, sometimes better than others. But I love that about him because he's direct and I'm direct, and we have really good discussions. And at one point I said, you're not going to get a busload of 100,000 millennials coming to New Hampshire. That's probably not going to happen. This was pre-pandemic. Maybe you would get it now. They're all leaving New York and Boston. But I mean, before, pre-pandemic, and that's changed, you weren't really getting that. But what I would say to the governor is I said, it is a both and. Let's make it so we attract younger people, but at the same time, have some of these younger entrepreneurs come to New Hampshire, capitalizing on the talent of an older workforce that incidentally was the economic locomotive of Northern New England for many years and continues to be. And that resonates across the aisle. So I have to be optimistic about it. But I think you have to speak to the political and philosophical sensibilities of people who are leading. New Hampshire is generally a fiscally conservative state. And I think if you don't speak in that language with an acknowledgement that we need to be forward thinking, I think we're in for some trouble and some headwinds.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
Okay, Lindsay, for the last question.
I'll make it quick, and I think just three topics that were coming to mind that I think are sort of infused in this, but I'm curious briefly, and we can take it offline as well. But one is a topic that I don't know, I don't feel like is often brought up in these contexts, but the importance. I did work on a project thinking about the folks that might be language or racial minorities in New Hampshire, and in the aging context, sort of what that means, the intergenerational aspect, all of those layers. And so just making sure that that's sort of, I'm hoping, and I think so, but that's part of the landscape here. One other topic that I've noticed recently as well that may be an interesting angle to think about aging is, I teach sustainability, and sort of this like idea of the like old New Englander behavior is actually like basically sustainability. And so these like younger students are really excited about stuff, and then you joke about things that like old New Englanders do. And so I think there's a real interesting, and New Hampshire, like when we think about the importance of our natural resources, like there might be an interesting lens there to think about. And then the last part, and I think Joe, I really appreciate what you were raising there as well. And I think this idea of thinking more about how do we move to sort of more age integrated communities, and sort of thinking about what are the planning decisions or the past planning decisions that have been made that have really segregated the different age demographics, and sort of how do we move away from some of those, but also think about what are these settings that can both like for health, for all of these different reasons, bring different age demographics into interaction with each other as well. So thank you both for these presentations. This is really exciting work. Thank you.
Great. I'm happy to respond. Ashley, you want to go first or?
No, I was just going to say there's this really common theme of sort of younger adults and younger people having sort of these similar values as older people. And I think that's a really valuable piece that's often missed. And one thing that Lindsay, you pointed out was sustainability. And I think that I'll carry that with me as we continue in this work. And it's really important to point out that connecting sort of these maybe, you know, older individuals with younger people, maybe like stay here, let's talk about this and let's continue that conversation, let's chat about it. So I really appreciate your words on that.
I just have a little comment, a couple of the comment in the chat box. Yes, I understand about the SBDC. I mean, that's an issue, and I'm not really weighing in on that yet. I mean, if asked, I'll have opinions, I suspect. Certainly, AHA's a good group too. They've done some great work. We've worked with them in the past. We continue to. And, you're right. I mean, I have heard from business leaders, one of the reasons our young people are leaving is because they can't make money here, right? So they come out, they burden with student loan payments and they can't make money. And if we really care about people, stop saying we care about them. I'll be honest, I have a daughter, I have kids, but I have a daughter who's a very talented young woman. I mean, we all say that because they're our kids, but she is a brilliant kid, double major, mathematics, environmental science, and, a minor in French at a top American university. I am not going to tell her to come back here and work for less than she's worth. I'm just not. She's a wonderful young woman. It breaks my heart to say that to you folks, but I'm just going to be honest. I know we're recording it, so be it. I'm not going to say it. And I would encourage my friends, if they watch the recording, let's pay these people what they're worth, because if you want these people to come back, you got to pay people what they're worth. And
let's make sure that housing is affordable as well, because that's another component of that domain, right? That is often missed. It's that one of those issues that for older people and younger people, housing and livable wages are really, really challenging in our area. It's really tough.
Well, you can effectively give somebody a massive increase in real wages if you can reduce their average monthly rent from $1,200 to $600 or $700 by creative housing alternatives. But I think you're going to have real problems from bricks and building sticks up from right now, given the lack of given the cost of building, given the lack of materials and the lack of man and woman power to build right now. We have a real
mainly, Todd, given the libertarian swing of politics in the state that rejects government intervention, even to wearing masks when they meet, nothing is going to happen. I was in the legislature 4 terms. Trying to get anything done is impossible. And
well, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think that we're have to have a timeout because we're digressing here. But I think that when we can communicate the great thing that happens when we do the things that help everybody can connect with that. And Jen, a next agenda item. Yeah. This is great conversation though.
It's a great conversation. You're not going to have people. You're going to have people on the. And Wayne had great experience. It's the legislature's changed. I know it. It changes all the time, but you're not going to reach some people. And you just have to hope that there are going to be people who you can reach consensus and move things forward, because I think we need to do that. But it's a point well taken.
We couldn't even get a decent accessory apartment bill passed on my 4th term. Time out.
Okay. Yes.
just when we get to the good stuff.
We supported that bill. We supported that bill. It's going to be the linchpin of our housing plan.
Good news. Good news. Our exercise is going to be talking about this stuff more. So you guys still have a chance to talk about things.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Are you taking off, Todd? Or are you going to hang out for our exercise?
Quite a group. I think I'm going to stay for a bit.
Okay. Well, I have you in a breakout group.
All right, so we're all going to go into breakout groups. This is basically, so one of the things we're going to do with this project is going out to each municipality and holding some form of a community forum. And it will all be virtual right now, at least. Obviously, we thought it would be different back when we applied for this grant, but for right now, we're going to go out, get as many members of the community as we can to come into a virtual forum, talk with them about different domains of livability in their communities and opportunities. And we did one in Durham last week, which we went pretty well. But we wanted to sort of practice just a quick session with you guys to get your feedback, give us other ideas, other thoughts. So basically what we're going to do right now is be broken out. Do we know how many groups, Jen?
5 groups.
5 groups. We'll be broken out into 5 groups. Each group will have a topic based on one of the livability domains, which will become apparent once we get into our groups. Each group needs to quickly introduce themselves, even though I think we've already done good introductions earlier. And then one person will be the note taker. I'm going to post the form for note takers in the chat. So whoever is the note taker in each group will just need to share their screen so that others can see what notes they're taking. Basically, we're looking at each of the livability domains. Obviously, we'll only do 5 right now because we have to be quick. And thinking about how things are done well in your community, what are other, and actually let's talk in this variation, let's just talk regionally as much as we can. I mean, if people have specific community things to say, that's fine, but just sort of thinking about the whole region just because we're a regional group. So basically just think about the form as like a flip chart. If we were all in person, we would have a flip chart there that someone would be writing on, so we can each like respond to it, react to it. And then at the end of the small group, this is an important part, please press submit.
Yes.
In your form, whoever the note taker is.
Yes, so every group has a SRPC staff person, or Ashley. Ashley, I'm counting you as staff with us. So perhaps if the staff person, if no one else wants to be the note taker, if you could be the note taker. And I will just kind of, the big thing that you need to do is when I hit go on the breakout rooms, you're going to have a little box that's going to pop up and it's going to tell you what room number you're going to. Remember your room number because you will do the same topic number as your room number.
Right. And I just posted the form in the chat.
Okay. So chat should have all of that link. Okay. So maybe all staff go ahead and click that so that we know that at least staff have that, and any of the rest of you, if you want to see the form and pop it up, go ahead and click that link as well. So you can see what the discussion questions are.
So just very quickly before we spread off, we're thinking about how does this work in terms of technology? How does it work in terms of the dynamic? How does it work in terms of getting the right information? So if you guys have feedback on any of that, we can talk about it later.
Yes. Okay, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, and a couple of us will still be here in the main room. So if you have any questions, you can return to the main room and then go back to your breakout. So I'm going to open the rooms. You will have 15 minutes. You will have a 30-second warning before, a 60-second warning before your 15 minutes are up. So with that, I will see you all in 15 minutes. Okay. So I think we are.
But Jen, I make my same suggestion I made last week.
Yes.
And I know why you do it. It forces people to think quickly and speak fast.
Yeah.
Except for us that talk too much anyway. But it would be helpful to know ahead of time what we were going to be asked to talk about. If you only have 15 minutes, sometimes you get your best ideas at minute 18.
Okay.
And if this exercise is to work, I think you need to tell the people ahead of time what group they're in and what they're going to be asked to speak to.
Okay. We'll have to figure out how to work that with the logistics because the breakout rooms, well, while we can set the breakout rooms in advance,
but it depends who actually shows up to the.
Exactly. The challenge is who actually shows up. So
I mean, the other thing too, Wayne, is that I think from now on, most of our forums will either be more focused or like Durham was a particular large group because we had all of the UNH students, which was awesome, but it did spread people out quite a bit. So I think in other times we do these forums, people will have one or two topics to work on each. So you're not sort of stuck on one topic.
Okay.
Did anyone else have any initial reactions about like if this process seemed to work okay, or we're kind of just trying to like fine tune what we're doing? It worked pretty well in Durham. So anything jumped out at anyone?
I did like the Durham event, by the way. I thought it went very well, and he collected a lot of input in a very short period of time. It was very impressive.
Definitely.
So I don't believe that I didn't like it. I thought it was excellently done. That's the one caveat I mentioned is the pre-warning.
Thank you.
Yeah, if possible, I think that would be really helpful. If we were feeling sort of rushed and which is hard to. Plus, we were given a choice as to what category to use, and I got a little
random.
Especially when the average age of the group is 70. It takes a while to get the idea from back here. Get
that flowing. Yep.
Well, put your hand up if you would volunteer for transportation.
What was that question?
Mostly because I'm building a transportation program right now, probably.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we talked quite a bit about that.
I liked how we were talking about housing, but these sort of other topics of transportation, walkability, and all these other things sort of flowed into the conversation, which I sort of anticipated, but I liked hearing it.
Good.
Do we have enough time built in for a very quick report out from each group, or do we need to move right on to a roundtable?
I think we still, yeah.
So we have 10 minutes. Victoria, what do you think?
I think you probably got the data you wanted. I'd really like to hear if people have things to share about what's going on, or if not, we can talk about the survey.
Okay. So maybe what we do is kind of do a hybrid commissioner roundtable / general thoughts on today's conversation, and we can, remind everyone you've got about 30 seconds so that everyone gets a turn to speak. We can go around the room. I guess either hand raise or virtual hand raise.
Which conversation are you talking about? We had different, you mean the one where there were presenters, or what we just did, over the last 20 minutes, or what are you asking? Sorry.
Sure, just any general thoughts that you want to share on today's conversations, either your breakout or overall, okay. We also have the commissioner roundtable, which was in the final agenda item here that we typically have, where you can share some important things going on in your community.
Okay, I'll just be very, very quick, and I'll jump in. I think if we could find a way to talk about amongst the communities, affordable, or I'll just say rather than that, various options in housing, I think it would be a really great conversation to have. And I was just talking about what Dover does, and what we continue to try to do to add to our options for housing, and we're constantly addressing that issue. And I think it's an exciting time, to be honest with you, on the subject of affordable housing or options for people. Whereas a lot of times when the subject comes up, people are horrified by the whole thing. And it's just, I'm excited by it because we're actually doing stuff and putting things in place, and some of them are working, and I love it. So that's it.
Good to hear.
Can I just add, since it's also Dover, I'll very quickly, the couple items that others might be interested in. We have had 3 new, 2 ad hoc committees and 1 a separate committee added that others might be interested in. So we have a ad hoc committee in Dover now looking at stormwater and flood resilience funding. And so they are, I think they're still about a year out from finishing their recommendations, but I'll certainly keep folks posted on that. I'm not on it, but some really interesting updates. We have a new racial equity committee that's starting to meet to help look at city data. There's already one on the school board side. This is a new one for city council, and trying to think about some of these things that we're talking about social cohesion within the community as well. So that's a very new, they're just getting up and running, and I can keep folks updated. And then we do also have a new, the police chief set up a new community board. So I think they're all, I mean, they're loosely related to community and connection and sustainability. So I'll keep folks updated. And then the other thing that we've talked about a little bit here that I'm just really excited that others might be interested. So Dover is one of the communities that just added Mr. Fox composting to our recycling facility. And everyone's just super excited. So I don't know the ins and outs of exactly how it all came together, but certainly
I'm very excited
to chat with folks in Dover if you're interested in exploring that as an opportunity as well.
No, I like what I saw today. I like the approach. My question would be, we're going to gather this information, but we're not going to try to boil the ocean, right? We're going to pick off 1 or 2 of these 8 items and focus on that. I assume that that's what we're doing, right?
So this phase is just to gather all of the information for all the different community reports. So that's kind of like a larger lens looking at, what the community is doing well and where there could be improvement. It's for those 4 communities that want to engage further with us and write action plans is where we would kind of, what you're saying, break off those different pieces and explore them further.
I can just jump in. We had an interesting conversation. We were talking about communications and where we get our information from about what's happening in town. And it kind of drifted over towards newspapers. And my general impression of what pretty much everybody in the group said is that we don't have a whole lot of faith in our newspaper. They don't give us a lot of information. It's just a broad stroke of what's going on. And I mean, there's no local reporters anymore, and they watch, city council, selectmen meetings and that kind of thing online. And I know from my own experience, there's no one there to approach you afterwards to ask you more in-depth questions about what's happening. So they're just kind of regurgitating what people can watch online, either live or streaming of their boards of selectmen or city councils or school boards online. And I thought that was interesting because I've often felt that not subscribing to the newspaper, and I used to be a news junkie and read it religiously, but not doing that now. I thought I was kind of alone, and I'm glad I'm not. So, but I think it's an interesting statement about what newspapers are no longer providing. So.
It's true.
A couple of things, if I can, real quickly. Got 30 seconds, right? One, I liked the note taker piece with the staff. I thought, Jen, that was for the staff, it was a good idea just to appoint that before we broke in. So we're not spending a lot of time on who's volunteering for that or not. So I appreciated that. I appreciated the process. I think refine Wayne's comments, I think are well taken. Take a look at that, but overall good stuff there. Summersworth, building on Mark's comments, there was an article, I think in the Fosters a couple of weeks ago, maybe about the growth and the building permits. What's amazing to me, again, I've kind of referenced the pandemic here in a couple of statements I've made, but I clearly would have thought that we would actually see a downturn in major areas. We actually have had our highest permit building permit count ever. And some other developments are happening. And then what's also kind of exciting and interesting is the possibility, certainly in proposed stages, but the development of some mixed use housing at the in the downtown area, the plaza parking lot that might be redeveloped, and then the future mill building, the old General Electric building that could be converted. We also have a grant to do some hazardous mitigation of the old police station in downtown Somersworth that could also be transformative. So it's some interesting times. I certainly don't see it as short term, but next couple of years, heads up. Was that 30 seconds? I think it was.
That was good.
Sure. 30.
My 30 seconds, and I know I'll break up a little bit here, but as an active real estate person, the available stock of real estate for people looking for housing is extremely low. The prices are high. I think the other thing that's interesting, I spoke to a gentleman who rents a cottage on Ossipee every year. The price this year went from $2,500 a week to $3,500 a week, $1,000 change in 1 year. So the demand is incredible.
Crazy times. Crazy times.
I'll jump in if I can. So this topic today is very close to my heart. So I work in aging services for an association that supports long-term care providers and senior housing providers. And so I'm thrilled to be talking about this, and I'm, spend a lot of time in housing advocacy. So a lot of worlds are colliding. But I think, I know we talked about the built environment a fair amount, or infrastructure, but I think a wonderful first step for communities is to look at, your existing social infrastructure as well. So, how are people getting information? How are older adults getting information? Can you catalog those resources in a way that is easy for people to access, so that there's, and find ways to make there be no wrong door. You may have heard that term, so that when you create a network of the usual suspects, your library, your town hall, but think beyond that, so that if someone is seeking information about aging in community, that someone will lead them in that right direction. I could go on, but some of the things that I put in the chat, I really think are pretty fantastic. This Tri-State Learning Collaborative on Aging came together across Northern New England with communities, and particularly community initiatives that have taken just their first steps, but in some cases have just completely taken off, to have volunteer transportation programs and wellness checks for individuals, all things that don't take dollars to add curb cuts or to build new housing. It's really just about utilizing older adult volunteers to look out for their neighbors. So I think there's ways, particularly in rural areas, that we can take the small steps, and that Tri-State Learning Collaborative on Aging is all about individuals and those community efforts getting together with webinars to share what's working, from everything from housing to food insecurity to access to medical care and so on. So I'll chat with anyone anytime. I'll put my information in the chat box if you want to talk some more.
Thanks, Lisa. Jen, is there a way that we can get access to the chat information after the meeting?
Yes, I was just looking on our website, which seems to be down right this second, but I will send out to all of you guys our chat media kit package, which has literally everything: the video, Facebook blurbs, the link to the survey, every single thing you could possibly need to share with people.
And please share our survey. Yay.
Yeah. And for this meeting in particular, it's enabled here so that when you open the chat, if you click on the 3 dots in the corner of the chat, and then you can choose Save Chat, and then you click on Show in Folder, and then it's going to save to your local hard drive to your computer, so as a text file, so you can copy and paste from that. But if you're looking for some of the things shared today,
I was also going to I'll coordinate with Nancy, but I was going to pull together a follow-up with Todd's information. Lisa, I can put your information and some of the resources that were shared today.
Yep, But in the chat right the second, I was just able to pull our little media page, which has everything right there.
So I'm sorry, Lisa, the accessing the chat thread, where was that? I can access that?
When you have the chat box open.
Yeah.
If you want to screen share, I think you can.
Oh.
If you want to.
I see it. I got it.
You
And
get
then
it?
there's 3 little dots in the corner.
Okay, yeah, it's at the bottom. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for around the room?
Good letter, Victoria in Foster's.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. It's about our energy future.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, yes. So are we all set? We're over our hour and I've got to take off immediately. And thank you all so much for being here. I think this was a wonderful, wonderful meeting. Appreciate very much all of it. And see you all again in a couple of months.
Can we just do a quick motion to adjourn?
No, we can't.
If we live that long, right?
There's no voting on the adjournment. It's just that everyone just says.
Aye.
Need a motion in a second.
Motion to adjourn.
We got Bill and Don, I think. I'm gonna go with.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.